Imagine having to take care of a girl who just traveled through time from 1200 years in the past and ended up before you in the 21st century. That's right. In this story, the main male protagonist, Xu Qing, finds himself having to look after a girl who suddenly appeared out of nowhere before him, hailing from the Tang Dynasty era. Xu Qing's main challenge is to teach this girl the ways of modern life. Of course, he'll have to explain to her why she shouldn't wander around at midnight like a ninja, or why she shouldn't draw her sword every time she feels like it. It will be quite the ride to see if our hero can transform this Tang Dynasty heroine into a 21st century woman. The story begins in a metropolitan area where heavy rain pours down on busy streets. Among the bustling crowd, our hero stands out as the only one without an umbrella. He starts running, seeking shelter in the dormitory building, and begins to ascend the stairs. While he's ascending to the top, Xu Qing starts to hear these weird voices. In the next moment, his eyes widen in shock as he sees a woman staring down into his soul through her intense gaze. Completely startled, he fumbles and drops his room key as he recoils. The woman also steps back to maintain a safe distance. Xu Qing dismisses her as just a cosplayer and begins his ascent once again. But when he takes a closer look at her attire, he's surprised to see how realistic it appears. Despite this, he shakes off his thoughts and continues up the stairs, convinced she's just a dedicated cosplayer. Before he can step into his room, the woman calls out to him from behind, telling him to hold up. Xu Qing pauses, turns back, and casually mentions that this is where he lives. The girl looks a bit spooked and quickly steps back, keeping a cautious distance. Seeing her reaction, he starts feeling a tad embarrassed, wondering if he looks so rough that even a girl finds him a random street molester. Anyway, he heads into his room. He takes a quick peek outside before closing the door, only to find her still lingering outside. After shutting the door, he takes off his soaked slippers and shirt. And after taking a steamy bath, he grabs a can of cola and also picks up the bag of cat food, calling out to his kitty, Melon. Right on cue, the little furball shows up with a sparkle in her eyes and eagerly digs into her meal. Meanwhile, our hero starts chugging down that refreshing cola as well, relishing that fizzy madness with every gulp. He takes another glance outside and sees that the rain shows no signs of simmering down. After a moment, he decides to check through the peephole in his door. And surprisingly, the girl isn't there anymore. While opening the door cautiously, he wonders if she's left, but as soon as his gate is wide enough, she appears right before his doorsteps. Feeling a bit awkward, he offers her an umbrella or assistance getting home if it's not too far. However, the girl doesn't respond to either option and instead asks where they are. Xu Qing points out that they're in his neighborhood on Beiwang Road. The girl goes silent for a moment, unsure of what to expect. Then she asks who our hero might be. Well, that's another simple question our hero doesn't have a clue how to answer. So, with a bit of confusion, he lets her know that he's just some random guy. He then tries to offer her his umbrella, but she just stares at this ordinary umbrella like this is some alien thing. After a moment of silence, she introduces herself as part of the Yan clan and confesses she has no idea how she ended up here. Her admission leaves our hero scratching his head, wondering if she's just a girl caught up in some cosplay fantasy. He sighs out of exhaustion and motions for her to come inside while he tries to call for help. As he dials Guard Cho's number, the woman's eyes lock onto the TV. An ad starts playing, and without hesitation, she slices the TV with her blade. Her face goes white as if she's seen some kind of dark magic that needs immediate vanquishing. The boy stands there, stunned, while the guard asks about the weird noises in the background. The girl turns to him with her bloodshot eyes, giving him an intense glare. Once our clueless hero is not in the position to utter a single word, the guard abruptly hangs up, thinking maybe our hero is tied up with something urgent. Xu Qing scratches his head, looking puzzled, and asks her where she came from. Meanwhile, the lady wants to know if the people inside the weird glass thing are dead, and she's curious about the folks he was chatting with on his brick. Seeing her those straw sandals she is wearing, the boy wonders if this quirky lady could even afford to replace the fancy TV she just sliced. Finally, he raises his hand in a calming gesture, reassuring her that he's a decent guy, and suggests she puts her sword down. After she retrieves her sword from the TV, the boy asks her name and where she's from. She promptly replies her name is Jiang He, and she's a disciple of the Yan clan. He compliments her for coming up with such a cool name and jokes if her Yan clan is loaded enough with cash to compensate him for his broken TV. The lady gets confused and asks how he doesn't know someone as prestigious as the Gusu Yan clan. The boy simply shakes his head, admitting he's never heard of them. Her silence speaks volumes, as if she's offended by this guy who doesn't even recognize her clan. Seeing her tense expression, the boy reassures her again that he means well, and gives her the green light to ask any questions she wants. The lady timidly admits she just wants to find her way back to the Yan clan. Our hero, still clueless about where this Yan clan might be, reminds her that they're in the city of Jiangcheng and asks if she knows it. The woman stays silent, and now our clueless hero is starting to rub his head in frustration, because he really doesn't want to entertain the idea that she might actually be from ancient times. So he asks her who is her emperor, but the puzzled lady insists that her emperor is one everyone should know about, which leaves our hero scratching his head at her cryptic response. She stares at him in confusion, wondering why he doesn't know about the emperor. She then asks our hero if it's the 16th year of Kaiyuan. Her answer shocks him, prompting him to pause and immediately start scrolling through his phone for information. He's amazed to find out that in the 16th year of Kaiyuan, it was during the reign of the 7th emperor of the Tang dynasty, known for the longest reign in the dynasty's history. To confirm if she's truly from the past, he asks if she knows Li Longji and mentions other famous figures from that era. The lady lights up with joy to realize he knows these names and eagerly asks where she can find them. With an anxious smirk, Xu Qing jokingly tells her she might find them in a Chinese mobile game. Suddenly, a delivery man calls from the doorstep, and the lady instantly grabs her sword to confront the intruder. The boy rushes over, urging her to calm down because it's just someone delivering food, not a threat. Lady Zhang asks if the man is a servant, but our hero explains this man is just here with a food delivery. As he accepts the food, the lady watches in confusion and amazement at this whole process of this takeout. The boy then asks if she's hungry and wants to eat something, but the girl nervously declines. Standing by the door, she asks him why everyone she's seen here has short hair, wondering if they're all exiles. Our hero reassures her that's not the case, but then he starts losing his shit and fears she might have already slaughtered someone when she first arrived here and saw those people. She quickly assures him she was just hiding in the dark. After that reassurance, he gladly proceeds to take a bite of his burger. But then, the girl creeps over his face once again, asking about the short hair once more. With a mouthful, he explains it's just a local style, nothing special. Her eyes fixate on the juicy wrap, filled with meat and veggies. She can hardly resist the temptation, but she snaps herself out of it and declines eating again. He suggests she quench her thirst with the soda if she does not want to eat anything, telling her it's super sweet and probably unlike anything she's ever had before. Lady Zhang gets angry, feeling insulted by his comment, and accuses him of looking down on her. Our hero quickly clarifies that he was just trying to offer her something to eat. As their argument heats up, they start bickering like an old married couple. In the midst of their squabble, our hero accidentally knocks over his can of Coke, spilling it all over the place. The fizzy drink starts bubbling on the floor. Seeing the strange liquid spread, the girl stares at him in disbelief, thinking he was trying to force her to consume this weird, black, and disgusting substance. The poor guy sweats nervously, insisting that it's not poisonous and attempting to explain the concept of a carbonated drink. But these modern concepts make no sense to the girl from ancient times. In a fit of rage, she pins our hero down and glares at him with fiery eyes before she can slice his head off. Shortly after, she calms down a bit when he proves the drink isn't poison by chugging it himself. The girl finally gets it, and our hero tells her to stop drawing her sword every time, mentioning how she freaked out his cat, Melon. He then looks at her and realizes there are only 3 options to get rid of her. Option 1, trick her into going outside and let her freeze or starve, but he knows she'd end up on the news. Option 2, call the cops, but she might go berserk and make a mess for him by killing those officers, and just thinking about it gives him the creeps. The third option is to keep an eye on her. Since she's from ancient times, he might learn some neat stuff from her, but he's also worried she might chop him in half if she keeps brandishing her sword. Instead of regretting it later, he decides to take her in and see how things go. With that settled, he offers her the burger. Although she's clearly tempted by the tantalizing food before her, she stubbornly looks away and asks him what exactly this thing is that he's holding. Deciding to prove it's not poisonous, he takes the first bite, and she agrees, eagerly telling him to go ahead. As he eats, the lady watches him closely, and the boy realizes this amount of food might not be enough for her, so he decides to make a rice bowl instead, thinking her ancient stomach might not handle the burger well. It seems he was just making excuses to eat the burger himself. Seeing him finish it off completely annoys the lady to no end. He gestures for her to sit down, but she cautiously checks the seat by pressing her hand against it before sitting down cautiously. Let's face it, she can't trust this strange guy completely, even though he did offer her his umbrella. His room is filled with oddities, and he eats weird stuff too, so she decides to remain vigilant and careful. She asks about this place again, and our hero reminds her it's Jiangcheng City. The lady then asks if he knows how she can return home. This time, our hero panics when he sees her reaching for her sword again and insists she puts it down before he answers. Once the sword is out of sight, he somberly reveals to her that she might not be able to return because they are really far from her home. The girl perks up at this and immediately asks how far away they are. Our hero reluctantly tells her it's almost 1,200 years away. The girl asks what he means by 1,200 years, so he explains that it's been that long since she came from her time. Famous folks like Li Bai, Yang Yuhuan, and Lu Shan, all ancient history now, dead and gone for over 1,000 years. She's totally shocked by this news and straight up calls him a liar. But the boy tells her to just look around. Nothing's the same. This world runs on its own rules now. It could be cool if you get the hang of it, but also risky. She's still not buying it and raises her sword to his face. He calmly reminds her that waving swords around is against the law, and she better learn the rules fast. The woman asks why he's bothering to help her out. The boy explains it's kinda like how he rescued his fat cat Melon from the tough outside world. He just felt like he had to help. But our hero needs to pick his words better because she gets ticked off again, thinking he's comparing her to a cat. After a bit of thinking, she figures he's not such a bad guy since he let her in and offered food. So, she asks him again why he bothered helping her. Our hero says meeting a quirky ancient girl like her isn't something he encounters every day, and he's genuinely curious about her. He adds that she'd probably be curious too if their roles were reversed. The lady quickly shuts that down, saying if someone as weird as our hero showed up in her era, the chief would have chopped him down right away. The guy reminds her that this era is all about peace and love. He tells her that as long as she's living here, she better learn to follow the law, never hurt people, and not destroy anyone's belongings. With that clear, he lets her choose whether she wants his help or prefers to wander outside. Before turning away, he reminds her one last time not to hurt civilians, or she'll get arrested. The lady finds herself in a tight spot, not knowing what to do since she can't even leave this place. The boy then says if she wants to stay, he can order her some food, but she has to give up her sword because he doesn't want to get arrested either. With no other options, she reluctantly throws her sword down. With that settled, he starts brainstorming what to order for her that won't be too foreign for her. He briefly considers ordering some mooncakes, but then decides to get her some rice and buns instead. He tells her to take a shower while they wait for her food to arrive. The woman, clueless, asks where she's supposed to bathe. Our hero leads her into the bathroom, which leaves her amazed at the sight. He tells her not to be too surprised because there are many more surprises to come, and reassures her not to be afraid as everything here is harmless. For instance, he shows her the shower, and she looks at it curiously like a puppy. She tries it out herself, and our hero can't resist capturing her curiosity on his phone. He then introduces her to bath shampoo and the concept of toilet. Afterwards, he waits outside while she showers. He rummages through his stuff, trying to find something suitable for her to wear. Inadvertently, he opens the bath door while attempting to knock, realizing she doesn't even know how to lock it. Nevertheless, he informs her he doesn't have any women's clothes, so she'll have to wait for proper clothing. He decides to teach her how to lock the door in the meantime. Shortly after, he is kicked outside, but the lady is now enjoying her first shower in this new world. She even tries tasting the shampoo bubbles, but ends up spitting it away. Meanwhile, our hero is questioning if all of this is actually real. He picks up her sword and closely examines the gleaming blade, deciding to have an expert check if it's authentic or not. The girl emerges from her bath in her new outfit, and while our hero is busy with something else, she asks what he's writing. He doesn't respond immediately, but eventually hands her the paper. It lists out current issues that need addressing, and she starts staring at it intently. There are everyday products written down which she is supposed to utilize in her daily life. She then complains about her current clothes, to which the boy says she looks pretty and clarifies that he's not hitting on her, he's just giving a compliment, like people usually do when someone looks good. But still, she sternly tells him to lay off any flirtatious remarks. Suddenly, he notices her straw slippers and tells her to put them away, promising to get her new ones tomorrow. While he's admiring her cuteness, a sudden knock on the door scares the lady, but Shuqing reassures her it's just a delivery boy with food. Reflecting on it, he can't help but compare her to a wild cat, always attentive and ready to attack. After taking the food out of the plastic bag, he hands it to her. That is when Lady Jiang remembers something her vice captain used to say, that if someone is helping you for free, they must have ulterior motives. Hearing this, Shuqing starts crying, but then she smiles and tells him that she believes he's actually a good person. In a few moments, once she finishes her food, Shuqing decides to have a chat with the girl. He starts by letting her know that she's not in the primitive era anymore and needs to adjust her beliefs accordingly. He tells her that if she were to rely on her sword for survival and ends up killing him, she wouldn't last more than a week before running out of food. So, he advises her to stop playing around with the sword and focus on other things, like using the TV for entertainment. He also points out that the smartphone can be quite useful too. Basically, he's trying to reassure her that she's perfectly safe here and no one is going to harm her. Hearing this, the girl nods in acknowledgement and our hero lets out a sigh of relief. But when it comes to the outside world, things get complicated. He explains that while this is a peaceful world, it could be dangerous for her. Curious, Lady Jiang asks why that is, and our hero explains that she might end up accidentally hurting someone. For instance, if she strolled into a royal castle with her sword drawn, they'd likely throw her in jail. It's the same deal out there in this world as well. Not only that, he also explains the concept of an identity card to her, warning that she needs to watch out for cops who might ask to see it. So, the first thing Shuqing wants to do is make her an ID card. Otherwise, she's going to stick out like a sore thumb wherever she goes because she doesn't belong here. After hearing about the ID card, the lady asks if she's like some kind of refugee here. Shuqing tells her it's actually worse because the consequences are pretty serious if she gets caught. The lady gets freaked out, but Shuqing tries to calm her down, promising to help her out, because meeting someone from 1200 years ago isn't exactly an everyday thing. Still, the lady remains hesitant, not sure if she can trust him and just wanting to go back home. To which the boy points out that it won't be easy for him to help her in her current situation, and their best shot is for her to cooperate as much as possible. After a while, the lady reluctantly agrees to cooperate and asks what she should do first. Shuqing wastes no time and tells her straight up, first off, never pull out that sword again. As they settle into a moment of quiet, the girl suddenly looks around and asks Shuqing where his wife is because she wants someone to gossip with. But the poor guy, as much as he hates to admit it, says, I'm actually unmarried. It's quite a surprise for the lady, and a sudden silence fills the room. Shuqing quickly reassures her that it's normal not to be married at his age and tells her to make herself comfortable in the spare room he has for her. She nods quietly and follows him as he shows her the new room she'll be staying in. Inside the room, there's a lot of stuff, but Shuqing quickly tidies everything up, making enough space for one person snugly. It's clear the lady isn't exactly thrilled about staying in this place, especially with a weirdo like him. However, Shuqing grabs some spare blankets and neatly arranges them on her new bed, urging her to rest. He understands she must be feeling confused, and he hopes that when they wake up tomorrow, it'll all feel like they were in a dream. He proceeds to leave the room, and before he does, he introduces himself as Shuqing, wishes her good night, and leaves her alone in her room. The lady first places her sword back and then sits on her cozy bed. Once midnight strikes, Shuqing finds himself awake, feeling a bit restless while reflecting on the entire hectic day. First off, he got rejected in job interviews, and when he came back, it started raining. Somehow he managed to reach home and then ended up meeting a girl who draws her sword every time she feels like it. But then he says, scratch this, and goes to sleep because there's a lot of stuff to handle tomorrow. When the next day rolls around, he opens his eyes and picks up his phone to find that it's already 10 o'clock. He jolts awake in his bed, remembering the nut job lady. He immediately starts looking around, and when he sees her sitting there, he finally realizes that he wasn't dreaming after all. He gathers himself and wishes her a good morning, asking why she woke up so early, only for her to remind him it's almost noon. He then asks if she's hungry, to which she responds affirmatively, albeit a little. She starts looking for something in her chest and hurriedly goes back to her room, returning with 2 silver pieces, telling him he can buy food with them. Shuqing is amazed to see the silver in his hands, though he knows silver doesn't fetch much. However, he thinks if she has any gold, he could use that to get cash and possibly help her obtain an ID card. The girl shows another piece of stone, but Shuqing quickly tells her to keep it because she can't go outside yet. He looks at her closely, estimating her height and width, and promises to buy her some clothes later, along with bringing back some food. Afterwards, he heads to the bathroom, brushes his teeth, and freshens up. Then, he heads to the shopping center to pick out some suitable clothes for her. After looking at several options, his eyes settle on a particular dress, and tells the attendant that he'll take that one as well. It seems like he spotted some bras in the distance, but couldn't bring himself to enter that section alone. After an hour of shopping, he finally finishes and looks at the stuff he bought, feeling embarrassed about holding women's cosmetics. He then heads to the bookstore, grabs some books, and makes his way back to his apartment through the bustling city. Upon reaching the building entrance, the guard asks him about his shopping trip, and our guy tries to hide all the feminine stuff he's carrying. The guard also asks about the phone call from yesterday, and he makes up an excuse, saying he dialed the wrong number accidentally. Before he heads off, the guard warns him to be cautious due to recent thefts in the area. He nods and assures the guard he'll remember. Once he's back in his apartment, he finds the lady standing there with her sword almost drawn, ready to chop off any intruders. The boy assures her she's safe and hands over the food box, mentioning he's also brought some essentials. Suddenly, something clicks in his mind. He looks at her with curiosity, and she asks what's on his mind. He awkwardly wonders aloud if she should be thanking him and seeing him as some kind of young hero or a decent guy, or something like that. The lady, not quite getting where he's coming from, thanks him anyway. It seems like it might take a while for her to figure out what this weirdo is always thinking. They dig into the food, and the lady devours her meal like a wild animal, which surprises our hero given the elegant image he had of women from her era. Nonetheless, he's pleased to see her enjoying herself. After they finish eating, he lays out the clothes he bought, showing her the new dresses and shoes. He keeps digging around for more stuff, and meanwhile, the girl spots the bra he got for her. The guy freaks out, like his soul might jump out of his virgin body, and quickly tells her to keep that thing down and promises to send her a video on how to use the bra to cover up her headlights. Feeling embarrassed, he dumps all the stuff he bought and tells her to figure it out herself. Seems like he's picked up quite a few interesting items though. Along with that, he's brought some books to help her understand this world and its culture better. He's even planning to teach her how to use a computer so she can learn on her own. Seeing her looking tired and restless, he suggests she get plenty of sleep before they can figure out their next move. But then she asks about his status in this world. Hearing this, he rethinks things and admits he's a graduate student still on the job hunt. It's funny how despite being unemployed, he still manages to splash out on fancy clothes and cosmetics. So, even the lady starts to think he's some rich kid, but our hero quickly shuts that down, saying he's from a poor background. Then she starts wondering if he might be a landlord or something. Nonetheless, she dives into her books, but when she sees those old pictures from her era, tears well up in her eyes as she thinks about how she can get back home. The boy reminds her he has no clue how to get her there, but asks her how she ended up here. The lady reveals she was chasing a small thief in heavy rain, got lost in the middle of the forest, and wandered around until she spotted these tall houses. Seems like this guy's clueless about how to get her home, but he cleverly changes the subject, telling her she's got to survive in this world before going back. Then, without skipping a beat, he asks about her military ranking and martial arts skills. You see, the reason this guy was asking in the first place was because he was interested in her martial arts skills to begin with. And the lady gives him an exact answer he likes, saying her Yan clan is considered the most powerful clan around. Excitedly, he asks how high she can jump without getting hurt. The lady confidently steps forward, pointing to the 4th floor of the building, saying she can jump from there without a scratch. This revelation leaves the guy's eyes practically popping out of their sockets. He then gets even more excited, eager to see all the fancy moves she's got under her belt. He starts spouting off a bunch of martial arts skill names he's probably picked up from video games, but it's all gibberish to her. He even asks if she knows Kung Fu and offers to learn from her eagerly. But the lady tells this enthusiastic guy to simmer down because he's past the age for learning, and even with perseverance and determination, he won't achieve much. The boy calms down and asks if these moves are like super strict or something. Lady Zhang shakes her head, saying it's not about being a master, just a few basic moves without all the strict rules. She then gets into position and shows him the first simple martial arts move, focusing on the waist and how to ground yourself. She explains that martial arts training takes time, building up bit by bit, day by day. He then asks if he can practice stakes and literally begs for it. She reminds him that it will take 3 years for him to learn stakes. The guy thinks that in that amount of time, he could become a full-fledged army soldier. So he gives up on martial arts and asks her to teach him sword techniques instead. The lady brings him back to reality once again, saying he's also past the time to perfect his reflexes because his eyes can't keep up with his hands right now. Finally, he throws his idea of becoming a warrior into the dustbin and simply tells her to try on the clothes. Once she's in the bathroom, he wastes no time taking advantage of the moment. He grabs her sword and starts swinging it like he's the second coming of the ninja itself. But this loser can't keep up because the sword is way too heavy for his puny muscles. The lady finally comes out of the bathroom, and when the idiot looks at her, she's looking smoking hot in her new getup. Her clothes fit like they were made for her, and she even walks around to check if they're tight anywhere. That's when Mr. Forgetful perks up, noticing her hair is all over the place and realizing he forgot to buy her a hairband. He tells her to tie her hair back with a band, and once she does, bam! She looks even hotter, a perfect wife material. Overcome with emotion, he starts crying, feeling bad for underestimating her intelligence just because she's from ancient times. He decides to take her for a walk tonight and promises to buy her a proper hair tie while back at home. As dusk arrives, the girl takes a peek outside her room and sees the boy sitting at the desk. She comes out and asks what he's doing. He tries to explain computers to her, like how you can trash talk everyone in the crazy lobbies of Call of Duty, and warns her to steer clear of 4chan if she wants to keep her sanity intact. The boy then asks if she's having fun reading books. She admits that most things are flying right over her head, but she's slowly learning. The dude tells her to take it easy, reassuring her there's no rush, and reminds her she's already brave and smart. He jokes that if he were in her shoes, he'd probably be a lost cause. Lady Zhang looks at our hero warmly, cheeks turning tomato red. While he's chilling at his desk, the lady sneaks up behind him again and asks if he doesn't have to work. He shrugs, saying he's already hustling to make money in this world. But when she imagines someone making money, she doesn't picture a schlub staring at a giant screen. Our hero explains he's trying to make some quick cash online. Since she wouldn't get all the tech stuff, he suggests she start with the basics. His mind is struck with a bright idea as to how to make her familiar with some basic stuff. He asks her how strong her chief's martial arts skills are, and she replies, pretty darn strong. So, the dude plays a video on his computer and asks if these guys on screen are powerful enough. The lady's eyes light up as she watches the intense fight scenes on his screen. He looks at her with the same enthusiasm and asks for her thoughts. With a timid voice, she admits these moves are something she has not seen in her life before, and just imagining fighting these characters makes her nervous enough to pray. He then pulls up another ridiculous video where a guy smashes through an entire wall with just the palm of his hand. When she sees this, she's absolutely terrified out of her mind, trembling as our idiotic hero eagerly asks what she thinks of the video. With a pale face and a voice tinged with fear, she asks if everyone here possesses that kind of magnificent power. Quick to correct her, he reassures her it's all fictional and none of it is real. This just makes the lady angrier, demanding to know if he's telling the truth. The dude confirms, saying once again that the kung fu she just saw was all bullcrap. He then explains to her that in this world, people create things based on their imaginations. For example, the martial arts he showed her is what people here believe it to be, even though everything is blown out of proportion. Looks like Lady Jiang is starting to grasp all these concepts. He reassures her that with time, she'll totally understand about arts and movies. Xu Qing then finally asks his original question if her chief's kung fu is better than what she has seen so far. Well, she reluctantly admits it's not. He then asks about flying techniques. She confirms they exist, but most folks specialize in just one. She points out how unrealistic those movie stunts are because physical strength only goes so far. The boy thinks for a moment, pulls up another video, and asks if she can do that move. She mulls it over for a moment, stands up from her seat, and starts swinging her hands super fast, moving like a blur. Xu Qing is totally thrilled to see her nail the technique and excitedly tells her she's got it. She tells him to hit her up anytime he wants to learn it, promising to teach him. With those words, she heads out, leaving my guy doing a little happy dance, probably dreaming of becoming a warrior someday. As she walks to her room, she notices a fat cat in her way, but she ignores the little furball and simply shuts the door in the poor cat's face. Once inside her room, she lets out a sigh in fear, realizing there's actually no one in this world without ulterior motives after all, and the reason our hero is helping her is to learn some martial arts. This new world is really scaring her. All these weird things do not make any sense. But then, she glances up at the wide ceiling, grabs her sword, and starts practicing. The noise from her room makes our hero curious if she's not going to take a nap. Feeling tired, he also drops down on his bed, finding it unbelievable that there's a woman right next to his room. The thought makes him really happy though, and he falls asleep with those sweet thoughts lingering in his mind. Suddenly, he is jolted awake by heavy voices. He looks outside to see dusk arriving, checks his phone, and realizes he spent the entire day sleeping. He immediately gets up and decides to take Lady Jiang with him to show her the real world outside. As she puts on her shoes, he advises her on the do's and don'ts in public areas, insisting she not do anything without his permission. After laying out all the rules, he asks if she understands everything, to which she meekly replies yes. He also doesn't forget to take a photo of her before they head out. However, in the photo, her pretty face looks more like a molester, who is looking forward to grabbing some peachy ass in the streets. The boy asks her to give him a smile, but her forced grin is even worse than her usual expression, and he nearly faints seeing it. He abandons the picture idea, and decides they should just get going. But before they head out, he tells her to leave her sword behind because he doesn't want any trouble. Lady Jiang immediately refuses, but the boy reassures her that the people on the streets are as weak as he is, so she doesn't need to worry about anyone. The lady reluctantly gives up her sword. While she's standing there, he tries to snap another picture of her. This time, he manages to get a really good shot and cheerfully says, "Let's get going." Once they step out of the apartment building, the girl starts looking around anxiously. Our hero explains that this is a neighborhood where families live. He points out the main entrance and the road outside and mentions the stores on both sides where people can buy food, clothes, or whatever they need. Lady Jiang gets intimidated seeing a guy on a scooter, probably thinking it's some kind of magical ride. As they walk on, they notice some people. A fat woman immediately recognizes Lady Jiang for some reason. The girl hides behind the guy while the woman insists she's seen her before. Meanwhile, a guard asks if our hero has snagged a girlfriend for himself, but the boy just laughs it off and says she's just a friend. But it seems this fat lady isn't letting up. She immediately recognizes Lady Jiang as the sword-wielding woman from yesterday. The guard and the woman start discussing the sword she had, and the fat lady explains everything in detail. Our hero quickly jumps in, yelling that it was just cosplay, where people pretend to be fictional or historical characters. Luckily, the fat lady buys the cosplay story, and our hero seizes the chance, grabbing Jiang's hand and walking away swiftly. Seeing them walking side by side reminds the old man of his own past. Once they're out of sight, Lady Jiang pulls her hand away and starts feeling grumpy. He asks if that woman saw her yesterday. The girl remains silent to this query, and the boy is now sure Jiang must have met that woman on the stairs. Nevertheless, they continue their journey together. The lady is quite shocked to see cars moving so fast. The boy then gives a brief description of cars and how they evolved from horse carriages to these robust, speedy machines. Since she can't understand how these things work, she assumes there must be a horse stuck inside providing the much-needed horsepower to run the car. The boy then introduces her to the concept of cameras and explains how the movies they watched were filmed with these devices. He points out that if he were to misbehave with her here, people from far away would still be watching from that CCTV and could get them arrested. So he reassures her that as long as she behaves herself, she isn't their target. Lady Zhang picks up a few pebbles from the ground, and our hero quickly tells her not to even think about knocking out any cameras. She stops immediately, and he tells her to just put the stones away. He then explains traffic lights and how they work, pointing out that red means stop and green means you can cross the road. I'm narrating this because I want my friends and fellow viewers to learn too. Once they cross the road, Zhang's attention is caught by the bright streetlights and the grocery stores. The high-speed cars are fascinating to her as well. As they walk, the boy picks out a hair ribbon for the lady. But when he imagines her with those cute fur balls on her head, he realizes it might not be suitable for her after all. He starts thinking while looking at all the cute, sparkly things laid out before them. Lady Zhang perks up at the sight, and when our hero asks if she likes a particular ribbon, she immediately says yes. Once she has the ribbon in her hands, she starts stretching it vigorously, but then she uses it correctly and puts it on her head, looking all cute and beautiful once again. Even our hero can't help but admire her beauty. As the sun sets and the city lights up, our duo heads into a restaurant. Our hero orders 2 fried rice cakes with extra spices and a plate of sliced cucumber as a side dish. As they look for a place to sit, the boy reveals to Jiang that this is the same place where all their food comes from. He relies on this restaurant because they serve the best food, and he's been enjoying it since he was a kid. Suddenly, Jiang's mind is totally captivated by the vibrant lights dancing before her eyes. She's so lost in the moment that she finds herself startled when the waiter arrives with their food. The boy decides to start eating and offers her a pair of chopsticks. She looks really nervous. And while he chugs down his lemon juice, he realizes he probably made the right choice by not letting her wander off by herself. She clearly needs more guidance than he thought, but he's confident he can teach her everything step by step. After they finish eating and pay the bill, they leave the restaurant feeling satisfied, especially our hero. They head back home, and once they're there, he asks if she's starting to feel more comfortable. She doesn't respond and just sits quietly on the couch. He tries to reassure her, saying that living in this world isn't so bad, especially with all the delicious food and junk food to munch on. He tells her that once she has her own ID card, she'll be able to enjoy it even more. Despite his reassurances, she still doesn't seem too thrilled about staying and quietly says she wants to go home. But then again, he reminds her that she can't go back home since it's already been 1,200 years. It looks like she has to accept reality. She asks how they're going to solve the identity problem. The dude explains he's no government guy to handle this stuff. But there's always a way, and reassure her that he'll help her. The girl gets flustered and feels grateful for his kind gesture. This time she thanks him properly by calling him a young warrior. The boy responds with the same brotherly energy, emphasizing that identity is crucial in this world, and without it, it's difficult to navigate. He then asks her where the list he gave her yesterday is. The girl points to the dustbin. The boy is disappointed by her action and tells her to retrieve it right away. Once she gets the paper out of the bin, the lady asks what they'll do if the ID card issue isn't resolved. Our hero points out that she'll be a criminal and there's nothing he can do. Without an ID, she can't get a job, buy property, or even use public transport, and emphasizes that an ID card is the holy grail in this world. The lady gets a bright idea and asks if, by making money and finding a place to live, the ID would become less important. The boy explains there are still many things she can't do without an ID, like having a bank account, a phone, online accounts, online shopping. The list goes on. He then opens his laptop, searches for unregistered resident certificate, while also telling the lady to approach the authorities directly for help with her ID card. He reassures her that the worst-case scenario is they might confiscate her, but he's sure they'll treat her nicely. Lady Zhang immediately reaches for her sword, asking if he's thinking about turning her into the authorities. The boy tells her to forget it and just focus on studying first. He suggests she look at history or something, and once she has a basic knowledge of modern society, she can decide for herself. The woman gets silent and seems visibly anxious and sad. She asks if it's a problem for him if she stays here. Our hero reassures her that she can crash here as long as she wants, but insists she shouldn't fight or kill with her sword. He promises everything will be fine. Just then, the cat comes over, and the boy realizes he nearly forgot to feed this furball in all the madness. He plays around a bit with the cat and tells Lady Jiang that if she has nothing else to do, she can do some studying. The girl bows her head and decides to do just that. Looks like the dude found nothing worthwhile on the internet, so he checks his phone and decides to call someone he knows. He's about to call his best friend Qin Hao, who is now a good police officer, though he's not sure if his internship period has passed, and Qin Hao is now a full-blown officer. While texting Qin Hao, he wonders if he should mention that he's met a girl from 1200 years ago. But he decides against it and sets up a meeting with his friend without revealing anything about their meeting. Feeling happy, the boy decides to take a shower to freshen up. After the steamy bath, he feels really satisfied. It then occurs to him that the girl hasn't showered yet, but he decides not to dwell on it. Suddenly, he remembers he's sharing space with someone of the opposite gender, and he knows he'd be in hot water if she caught him wandering around naked. Thankfully, no one sees him, and he hurries into his room. A while later, Lady Jiang cautiously emerges from her room, darts to the bathroom with clothes in hand, and immediately shuts the door for a much-needed bath, just like she used to do in ancient times regularly. Since it's the weekend, the boy grabs a digital writing pad and starts teaching her how to write. She's already good at reading traditional Chinese characters and nailing their pronunciation, so now she tries her hand at writing a few words. Suddenly, Melon pops up, grabbing both their attention. The cat looks hungry, so the boy decides to feed her while Lady Jiang keeps practicing her writing. Watching him dish out cat food, Lady Jiang gets curious and asks what it actually is, to which Shu Qing explains it's food made just for cats to eat. Lady Jiang quickly imagines how they might produce such cat food, picturing pouches hanging from tall trees in her mind. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door, and the boy rushes to receive the food delivery. He hands it to the lady, telling her it's her dinner for tonight, as he's going to meet his friend later to ask about her identity card. The girl immediately starts digging into the food, and our hero assures her he'll teach her how to use a phone and computer so they can stay in touch. While she eats, Little Melon chimes in asking for some food, but the dude scoops up his cat and reminds her to stick to her own cat food. Curious, the lady meekly asks if she can't give this cat some of her food, to which the boy nods and explains that this kind of food isn't healthy for cats. The lady is shocked to hear this, and her mind stops for a moment. If this food isn't healthy for an animal, how can it be good for humans? She even starts feeling like her burger doesn't smell good anymore. Shortly after, he shows Lady Jiang how to use Discord to message him on his phone, making it clear that it will not be him hiding inside the computer, but rather it will be the transmission waves who will carry his voice to her. Leaving his dormitory, he scratches his head, wondering if this is all okay. Eventually, he reaches his destination after a bus ride. Stepping off, he looks around and spots his friend sitting in the distance, waving at him. When they finally meet face to face, they exchange greetings. Officer Qin then pours a cold beer for our hero, mentioning it's the first time he's serving him a cup of beer. They both sit down, and our hero asks his friend how he can drink as a police officer. Qin Hao explains that he's off duty and dressed casually, just here as an ordinary person. The boy then places his order, carefully noting all the delicious items he's about to enjoy. They clink glasses and toast each other. Shu Qing asks his friend how his job is going and what it's like being an outstanding officer. Qin Hao bluntly describes it as terrible, and all the talk about heroes saving the day is nonsense. He shares how he's often pulled into trivial disputes between couples and ends up resolving conflicts with old ladies in the neighborhood. He hardly ever encounters thieves. Instead, he deals with daily disputes and nonsense. But our hero Shu Qing points out the brighter side, mentioning how people are generally living and working happily, which is a good thing. As much as Qin Hao hates his job now, he always dreamed of becoming a police officer when he was a kid. However, he stopped growing after hitting 1.6 meters, knowing that the minimum height requirement was 1.7 meters. He cried a lot in our hero's arms. Fortunately, when the height requirement was replaced by the high jump, he was excited to start practicing every day, eventually achieving his dream. But after dealing with just trivial disputes, the officer is so worn out that he jokes he'd even fight a woman with a sword if he has to, just to make a big show. Our hero immediately tells him not to joke about such things. Suddenly, the boy changes the subject and casually asks about what happens if a homeless person who has lost their memory wants to get an ID card and work without any proof of citizenship. To which the officer bluntly states that getting an ID card isn't easy, and someone fitting that description is likely a shady person. With the energy of an officer, he asks our hero for the person's name and address he is speaking about. The boy tries to spin a tale about how his mother's brother had a son whose friend is in a similar situation. The officer cuts him off, telling him to stop the nonsense and reminding him that without proof of identity, like a blood test or something similar, they can't get an ID card. The boy presses further, asking if the person he encountered was unidentified and strange, like a homeless guy. The officer points out that if their behavior is suspicious, they must be investigated. Seeing his friend's suspicious gaze, the boy quickly tells him to stop looking at him as if he's harboring a fugitive. He insists he's not here to discuss how to cover up anyone's identity. His friend agrees, reassuring him that he trusts him. He suggests asking for basic information from the stranger. They could also use a person's directory or DNA information to verify details. His friend suddenly grows irritated, telling our hero to drop the conversation and starts downing his beer. The boy jokes that he only came here because he needed something to talk about, otherwise they would not have met. Then, he playfully tells his friend to forget everything and jokingly extends his hands, telling him to handcuff himself because he wants to experience what it's like to be interrogated and cuffed. After their banter, our hero brings up the ID card subject again, but the officer's answer remains the same. He gives an example that if it were so easy to get a new ID, criminals would be stabbing people daily and running off with new identities to start fresh. They continue their back and forth, and after drinking a lot of beer, the officer finds himself knocked out cold. Our hero tries to wake him up, reminding him of his duty to resolve disputes between old ladies. But the officer just wants more beer, so our hero tells the waiter not to bring any more. The boy pays the bill while his friend still wants more booze. Our hero then learns there's a 50% discount if you spend 100 yuan, so he decides to get a lot of fish for Lady Zhang. After saying goodbye to his hiccuping friend, he grabs his takeout and heads back home. Though he is a bit let down that he got no lead, but he is not sweating it. Once he's back home, he finds the girl fast asleep, and he can't help but admire her beauty. His heart and brain seem to short-circuit as he gazes at her, unsure of the feelings stirring inside him. The girl wakes up abruptly, feeling a bit startled to see him back. He shows her the food he brought, and she quietly says thanks. Not satisfied with just a simple thank you, the boy playfully insists she say it loud and clear. Blushing, the girl says, "Thank you, young warrior," which prompts an exaggerated reaction from the boy, claiming it was an easy task and a small contribution. As he unpacks the food, the girl asks if he drank a lot. He says no and shows her a yogurt pack, telling her to lick it before drinking. He starts rubbing his tongue against the sweet and sour yogurt, and she follows suit, surprisingly enjoying it and diving right in. The boy tells her to eat up and not let the food get cold. As he heads into the bathroom to take a bath, he can't help but smile, feeling the warmth of coming back home and seeing someone waiting for him. After his bath, when he's back outside, the girl immediately notices him. He asks if she checked her clothes, which confuses her at first. Then she remembers the bra he brought for her and feels super embarrassed just thinking about it. Apparently, trying to figure it out with YouTube tutorials didn't go so well. Later, she heads to the bathroom to change. She's nervous about trying on the fancy dress, since she's used to plain outfits that match her mood. She wonders what kind of prickly princess she'll look like in this new dress. She lays out the bra and dress on the bed, takes a bath, and dries her hair with a blow dryer. She's really grateful for the kind young man helping her adjust to everything, but she knows relying on him isn't a long-term solution, and she can only get so far with her limited knowledge. The sunshine of the next day leaks through the window, and the girl comes out of her room while rubbing her tired, sleep-deprived eyes. It looks like our hero woke up early this time. Lady Zhang asks him if he's working early in the morning, to which he replies that he's just watching some news. The girl immediately exudes a gloomy aura, asking if he is a government official. The boy reassures her that he's not, reminding her that if he were, she would already have her much-desired ID card. He then asks if she's hungry and offers to buy breakfast, asking if she'd like to come along. The girl declines and heads to the bathroom, so the boy decides to go by himself, telling her she can Netflix and chill in the meantime. Humming a tune, the boy strolls outside. The old guard calls him over, and the boy reluctantly approaches, noticing 2 more people present. One of the ladies asks if he's heard any creepy, weird noises lately, and the way she is looking at our hero, it's clear she suspects him of being the source of these sounds. It seems like the boy is completely clueless about what the lady is talking about, and he tells them that he didn't hear anything, and slept soundly last night. He wonders if there was a theft, but the old man suggests that they might be haunted because his dog was terrified by something the other night, so much so that it didn't even bark. When the boy asks the old guard if he noticed anything else, the old man takes a puff of his cigarette, exhales the smoke, and confesses that he didn't see anything, but he caught something on video footage. They all gather in the surveillance room where the old man plays the video. In the footage, they see something moving so fast that it appears as just a blur, and everyone is visibly terrified by this mysterious creature. And the reason our hero is also feeling terrified is that he's pretty sure it's Lady Zhang. He facepalms himself, unsure why she's doing that, and decides to go back to the apartments to ask her himself. Well, it looks like now we know why Lady Zhang was feeling tired a while ago. She was probably trying to explore this world by herself in the night to learn new things. The boy then asked the old man if the same had happened yesterday as well, to which the guard says no, noting that nothing unusual happened last night. He awkwardly laughs and decides to entertain the idea that maybe there's a ghost around. The bald guy over there and the chubby lady get curious, wondering why a ghost would be playing around in the dead of night, especially in their place. The old man decides to keep an eye out to see if there's some guy lurking around looking for a chance to steal. The boy finally gets back home and wastes no time yelling at her, asking why she snuck out in the middle of the night before. He stares at her with a mix of disappointment and concern. The girl meekly asks how he knew it was her wandering, which just infuriates the boy more. He facepalms in frustration, reminding her about the CCTV cameras everywhere that caught her. The girl looks a bit scared and worried about him. So, she quickly explains she was wearing a mask. Relieved, the boy sighs and figures as long as she keeps her face hidden, they're probably safe. He tells her from now on, if she wants to go out, she has to take him along. No solo trips allowed while she's staying here. He stresses how dangerous her situation is, so she can't just wander around freely. The lady timidly asks if she caused trouble for him, and he reassures her that luckily, no one recognized her, because everyone thought there was just a ghost haunting the place. Looks like the lady had no clue what haunting meant. Seeing her clueless face, my guy gets agitated once again, and quickly tries to Google a movie about someone from ancient times who ends up in the future and gets into trouble because of their wild behavior. He wants to emphasize how dangerous her actions could be if she's not careful, and he is pretty sure what he just imagined perfectly fit the description of her character. The girl looks timid and promises to quit causing trouble if it's a bother to him. The boy then tells her to calm down and suggests ordering takeout later, asking what she'd like, whether hamburgers, chicken rolls, or anything else. The lady responds with a charming smile and thanks him for the healthy food he is ordering for her, but the boy teases her by reminding her that if she wants to eat even healthier, she could try the cat food. After their playful banter, the boy takes the laundry and puts the clothes into the washing machine. He also takes the opportunity to educate her about how the washing machine works. Upon seeing this, the girl quickly rushes to her room, retrieves her clothes, and returns to the laundry room to add them to the washing machine. While Shu Qing is looking at the laundry, he notices something tucked inside her clothes. Curious, he pulls out the item and holds it up in the air, leaving the girl completely embarrassed. She hurriedly snatches the item back from his hand and rushes back to her room. Zhu Qing is surprised to realize that it's a foot binding, which does not make sense as how she was moving around the neighborhood with her injured feet tied up with the binding. He glances at her, recalling how her feet seemed perfectly fine when he last saw her in those shoes, so it does not make any sense for her to tie her feet with clothes. He then decides to search online to see if martial arts enthusiasts have any interest in some sort of foot binding practices. But by the looks on his face, the search results don't align with his expectations. Turning to her, he casually asks if he can take a look at her feet. She stubbornly pouts and shakes her head, clearly uncomfortable with the request. The boy asks why is that, to which the girl just gives him a silent treatment. Well, it looks like this clueless guy has finally caught on that those bindings weren't for her feet, but for her chest. It's no wonder why she didn't bother with the undergarments he brought earlier, and he thought maybe her hooters were big enough already to fit anything. His soul nearly jumps out of his body as he realizes his foolish mistake. She shoots him an angry look, sword drawn and eyes blazing, seemingly ready to chop off his head. However, she manages to take control back to her nerves and turns around, leaving this weakling utterly terrified after getting scared to death. But since she's already mad at him, he tries to lighten the mood by calling her out and singing in his terrible voice. The lyrics are all about Lady Jiang, describing her modest stature, natural beauty without makeup, and how beautiful she is from head to toe. He even sings a song about a man who loved an ugly woman but had 5 children with her. He claims that only a Gaiga Chad with a Sigma male mentality could do such a thing, and he desperately wants to become one of them. Despite his attempts at banter, he ends up getting yelled at by the girl once again. Afterwards, he gets back to the main business and tells her to watch some tutorials on how to wear these undergarments, and he will be back in 5 minutes. Hopefully with fewer jokes this time. Exactly 5 minutes later, he returns and checks on her progress. But to his surprise, she looks utterly spooked and asks if this is how everyone lives here. With a trembling voice, she mentions that while these undergarments might seem comfortable, they make her feel like a harlot. The boy tries to reassure her that there's nothing wrong with feeling comfortable, but she persists, calling it shameless. He challenges her perspective, asking what there is to be ashamed about. After a moment of contemplation, she falls silent. He launches into a humorous tirade about how she's stuck in the past while modern women flaunt their assets in anything they like. He even throws in a jab, saying if a man can wear half underwear, so can a woman as well. But she sticks to her guns, immediately rejecting what she calls immoral thinking. Seeing he couldn't reason with her, the dude decided to switch gears and calm her down. He revealed that besides studying and working, computers are also great for gaming. He warned her about the toxic fanbase in games like Apex Legends and instead introduced her to a game suspiciously similar to Super Mario. After seeing it for the first time, she became engrossed in the cartoonish world of jumping plumbers. While the lady was busy beating Niftsky's speedrun record, our hero quietly slipped away, thinking it's best to keep her occupied indoors. Later on, when he returned home, he interrupted her game to teach her how to defeat the final boss. After their gaming session, he felt exhausted and decided to take a nap while she continued playing on his laptop. Once he's settled into his room, he reflects on how lucky he was not to land a job on that rainy day. Otherwise, even if the interview had gone well, Managing a 1200-year-old ancient girl would have likely forced him to quit. As dusk casts its yellow hue across the room, our hero returns to find the lady. He suggests they eat out and tells her to dress nicely this time instead of looking like a slob. He even advises her to try a different hairstyle. She looks at her options and emerges in a new dress, blushing as she adjusts to the modern style, albeit a bit too modern for her standards. The boy blushes too, struck by her beauty, but quickly urges her to change back to her original dress to avoid drawing attention in public. This sends the girl into a fit of agitation and frustration beyond measure. As they wander outside, the old security guard jokingly asks if he's taking his girlfriend shopping again. Our hero clarifies that they're just friends, not dating. The old man then reveals he's holding onto a talisman to ward off ghosts temporarily until his mahogany arrives. When asked if he resembles the god from the New Year's festivities, Shu Qing gives a thumbs up and hurries along, noting it's getting late. Meanwhile, Lady Jiang is already occupied with her own thoughts about something. Once they're alone, she can't contain her curiosity any longer and asks Shu Qing what girlfriend means. He explains it's just a female friend. Perplexed, she wonders why he denied she was his girlfriend earlier. He tells her to be patient and promises he'll explain later. Shu Qing is pretty sure that if Lady Jiang figures out the true meaning of girlfriend, she might just pack her bag and bolt away from his place. As they start walking once again, the boy suggests she watch videos about her kingdom's history, but she expresses reluctance, noting that revisiting her past is painful. As they walk, Lady Jiang notices the absence of curfews, street vendors, and muddy potholes in this peaceful environment. Everything feels surreal and dreamlike to her in this prosperous world. Their stroll halts at a tea stall where Shu Qing orders bubble milk tea and other treats and urges her to try it. She observes curiously, but hesitates to drink. Looking around, she asks if people make money this way in this world, and if she could learn to do such work. Shu Qing bursts her bubble gently, explaining she can learn the skills but can't earn money without an ID card. While she sips on her tea somberly, the boy reassures her that the identity card issue will eventually be resolved, so she shouldn't lose hope. He encourages her to enjoy the tea at the moment. As she drinks, he asks if she finds it tasty, but it turns out she doesn't really like it. She mentions the taste isn't quite to her liking, and the pearls are difficult to chew. The boy readily agrees, stating he feels the same and doesn't understand how people enjoy drinking this piss-like stuff. The girl gives him a cold stare, likely not appreciating being the subject of his taste critique. He quickly reassures her that he thought girls liked sweet things, which is why he ordered it for her, while his own drink is a bit sour. He invites her to try his drink instead. She cautiously sips his drink through the straw, and as the delicious flavor hits her palate, her face lights up with joy. So the boy exchanges his drink with Lady Jiang's pearl tea and gives her a gentle smile, genuinely pleased that she enjoys it. As they continue their outing, Lady Jiang starts to feel that something isn't quite right, but decides not to dwell on it, focusing instead on sipping her drink once again. After finishing their meal, the boy shamelessly burps, indicating his full stomach. He suggests taking a quick tour before heading home, and they stroll through the vibrant city in the middle of the night. Suddenly, the boy decides to stop at a bus station and suggests taking her somewhere good. Since this is her first time hopping onto the bus, he tells her not to panic and just follow him. The boy proceeds to put a coin in and enters the bus, guiding her to a window seat so she can enjoy the ride to the fullest. As the bus starts moving through the busy streets, the girl is amazed by everything she sees outside. The boy is a bit surprised that she isn't overreacting, considering it's her first bus ride. She reveals that she has ridden horse-drawn carriages many times before. Once they reach the Lanjiang Bridge station, they exit the bus, and he introduces her to this new place called Lanjiang. He eagerly and proudly tells her that in her era, this place might have been desolate, but now it's the heart of the city's nightlife. As she takes in the sight before her eyes, she wonders if this is even possible. The boy encourages her to find her own answers by studying history if she finds it hard to believe. While they stand by the river, the boy takes out his phone and doesn't waste a moment before capturing a memento. The girl happens to be looking in his direction, creating a perfect pose for a picture, and our hero captures that moment with a single click. At that moment, he also promises her a trip on a plane once her identity card issue is sorted out. The idea of soaring into the sky is completely new to her, so he reassures her once more and says that for now, she can stay in his cramped little room and learn about the world. Curious as a child, she asks what comes after understanding the world. The boy pauses, thinking for a moment, and explains that she'll achieve true freedom, gaining a clear sense of what's right and wrong for her, and she can fully enjoy this future world. Checking his phone, he announces that the time has come. Right on cue, fireworks burst into the sky, painting it with vibrant colors and light. She can't help but wonder if her family would be amazed by such a magnificent sight. He smiles at her and encourages her to enjoy this time here, on behalf of her relatives as well. The next day arrives, and the news our hero sees is rather unpleasant to say the least, because Lady Jiang can be seen doing her ninja moves outside by the lightning poles. Of course, the dude's face sours at the sight, but it's also kind of reassuring. Since she played ninja at midnight, the guards have been on patrol more frequently, so there wouldn't be any real thieves around for a moment. Suddenly, Lady Jiang notices people gathered outside and curiously points her finger towards them, asking what's going on. Shu Qing gets creeped out as he realizes they've started to perform rituals to ward off the ghosts in the area. Shortly after, they dig back into their meals, and the lady points out that Shu Qing's lifestyle feels like being in a prison. He chuckles and reminds her how they went shopping earlier, watched documentaries, had lunch, shed a few tears over some anime, and then had dinner. He tells her that it's called having a home and an otaku's lifestyle, but the girl does not seem to understand anything. So Shu Qing explains that staying at home means having the freedom to choose what to do and where to go. He compares it to an ancient landlord who spends his days in the mansion with his family and a cat. The lady then decides to go for a little walk, and Shu Qing asks if she wants to go out on her own. She stays silent, which is all the confirmation he needs. So, he goes on a tirade, listing all the dangers and her shortcomings she has, effectively shutting down the idea and telling her to just stay here for now until she is not fully aware of the world. He tells her that even if he gave her money to eat at restaurants, she still has to figure out how to earn money. Otherwise, she'll just be on a spending spree. He reminds her that she can either commit crimes to get some quick cash or do some hunting, but since there are no hunting forests around, she'll end up going through garbage. Finally, the girl gets silent and just eats her burger, thinking that without that single ID card, she can't even go out for walks on her own. Seeing her sad face, Shu Qing then puts his hand into his pocket and offers her 2 coins, reminding her that she's at least learned how to take the bus so she can experience it by herself, which will be her first step forward. But the girl refuses to take the coins, saying she hasn't learned anything. Shu Qing, however, forcibly gives her the coins, telling her to spend some time outside and assuring her that she's learned a lot in the first month she's been here. Curious, the girl asks if there are really ghosts out there, so he points at the people outside doing their ghost-busting routine. He assures her that once she starts making money, she can pay him back. When she wonders aloud what happens if she doesn't earn anything, he assures her they'll figure it out. Once again, she thanks him, calling him Young Warrior. The boy then runs a game on his computer where she can play a character, explore, and learn how to make some cash. He suggests she give it a try to see if she gets the hang of it. When she asks why she can't just do what he does and work online for money, he explains it's pretty complex and she should start with the basics. Suddenly the doorbell rings and the boy freaks out, telling her to hide in her room. But the person at the gate gets all antsy and yells at the boy to open up. When he hears that voice, Shu Qing gets even more jittery and hurriedly guides her into a room and locks the door before finally facing his father. There's this grumpy old man staring him down. The boy nervously says hi, but the old man adjusts his glasses and insists the boy call him landlord for now. The old man then looks around, demanding to know if his son has found a job yet. The boy, addressing his father as landlord, assures him that he will pay the rent on time and defends himself, stating that since he can afford the rent and his current lifestyle, he does not feel the need to have a job. The old man gets all agitated to hear this, and just like a typical father, he starts berating his son for how big of a failure he is. But the son tries to cut him off by saying since his father is here for the rent, he'll gladly pay up. When the old man spots some RPG game running on the computer, he gets even more annoyed and makes it clear that if his son doesn't find a job by next month, he's hiking up the rent, no questions asked.